Hello, Bronco fans and football fans everywhere. Welcome to Broncos Breakdown on the MHRT network, as well as my own channel, Broncos Breakdown on YouTube. This is a show that is everything Broncos and brought to you with emotion, passion, honesty, and sometimes guests like tonight. I am your host, Bronco Bill. So I have a guest tonight. I've had him on the show a couple of times. Really great guy, super knowledgeable, has his own business. I'm waiting for him to come into the green room so I can bring him on. He's putting down, not putting it down, but he's putting his son to bed. His little toddler is putting him to bed. And then once he jumps in, we'll get right with the show. I hope each and every one of you out there had a fantastic week. Hope you had a fantastic day today. And as you head into a weekend, this is the last weekend, I believe. Yes, this is the last weekend of September. Unbelievable. And this year is flying by. I mean, flying by. This is September 27th. It's only 31 days in September. So the 1st of October is Tuesday. 1st of October is Tuesday. All right, guys, I'm going to bring in Mario Vetanze. I'll introduce him right now. Mario, what's up? What's up, big dog? How you doing?
I'm always good when I get to spend some time with you, Bronco Bill. That's for sure.
I appreciate it. Well, everyone out there, in case you have not seen Mario Vetanze on the show before, I've had him on the show. He's the Colorado/Denver guru of medicine. Mario, go ahead and let everybody out there know what you do for those who haven't seen you yet.
Yeah, so the best way to describe it is just body work. Basically, I tell anyone if you're having any sort of physical pain, you come into my office and I have a lot of different ways that I can treat you and get rid of your pain. And if you have any questions or you want to know more, you can always go to vetanzetherapy.com.
Nice. So how was your day today?
It was busy. I was at the office all day, so I worked all day. I did a house call for a Bronco player, and then came home and spent some time with my son, put him down to bed. And now, arguably the best part of my day right now, Bronco Bill, is I get to do a show with you.
I appreciate the compliment. Thanks so much. I'm assuming you can't mention who that player was.
Yeah, I won't mention who it is, but it's somebody who's not traveling with the team currently.
Okay. Well, that leaves the door open for a lot of players, but that's okay. That's fine. So, Mario, how's Jericho, your son?
Man, he's great. You know, he just had his 3rd birthday, and it seems like every day he's talking more and learning more things, and it's just like he's such a happy kid. He's so happy all the time. He's the greatest blessing ever. And I don't know if you had heard this, Bill, or if you've seen it. We actually have another one on the way. Jericho's going to have a little brother in December.
Nice. Congratulations, Mario. Honestly.
Thank you very much. So awesome. Thank you.
Because I know how tough it was to have your first child. See, your dad worked his magic and all that.
That's right.
Wife, and now the gates are open, man.
That's right. Yeah, I know that's right.
Hey, Kamani, welcome to the chat. Says I'm on late. That's because I have Mario Vetanze and I got to accommodate the guests, and so it's not.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely, it's not every time at 7:00 my time, but hey, just glad Mario could come on anyway. Just very, very happy.
Happy to be here.
My nephew, Robert Marino, says, happy Friday, gentlemen. I hope you have a fun-filled weekend. Absolutely.
Thanks, Robert. Appreciate that.
Same to you. Okay, Mario, before we dive into the main topic, which I know that you have your, medical mind and medical dealings with. Before that, what did you think about the first 3 games of the season? First off with Seattle. Did that shock you?
I think I would say the first half shocked me. I mean, from the 2 safeties to how well the special teams and the defense played. And then you could see it started to unravel a little bit in the second half. I think it was something like 6 straight 3-and-outs. And you just can't do that as an offense. It's not sustainable for the defense to continue playing at a high level, especially when you're trying to stop the run on a good running football team. I wouldn't necessarily say that the result shocked me. Like, I don't think that there were a lot of people that thought that Bo Nix was going to go into Seattle in his first ever game and win. But I think that game was a lot closer than even the final score would indicate. You know, they had it in hand. Bo made some rookie mistakes, which again I think are to be expected at this juncture. And then, you know, moving on to Pittsburgh, I think everybody expected a low scoring game. I think everyone thought that the Broncos defense would look really good, and for the most part they did. I mean, the defense played well enough to win that game, and quite frankly the offense didn't. So it wasn't that I was incredibly shocked that they started 0-2, but it was more of like throughout the course of the game, like the games were never out of hand. You know, there was never a point in the game where you're like, man, like it's over until the very end. So I think the surprising thing to me is that the offense didn't look a little bit better. But I think that's also to be expected a little bit with a rookie quarterback.
Right. And then week 2, I mean, against Pittsburgh, we laid an egg at home, 13-7 or 13-6, excuse me. That was
I think it was. They said it was the lowest. Yeah, they said it was the lowest scoring game since the infamous COVID game, where they didn't have a starting quarterback and they only scored 3 points in that game. And it had been, you know, however long since they hadn't scored a touchdown at home. And it's just not something that you're used to seeing from a Denver Broncos team, even though this team has struggled, you know, really since the Super Bowl win. And the offense hasn't been good enough, obviously, since even before they won the Super Bowl. And so I think, you know, after week 2, it wasn't just necessarily that they lost, but kind of like how the offense looked in the manner of losing. And then thankfully they were able to bounce back in week 3.
Yeah. Now that surprised me because I had them losing to Tampa Bay because they were 2-0, and I had us beating the Steelers, which is flipped. So that win, I should say, 26-7. That surprised me a lot because Tampa Bay was really on fire their first couple games.
Yeah, Tampa Bay is a very good team. Now, granted, they were a little thin up the middle. I mean, if Vita Vea plays in that game, I don't know if it's necessarily a different outcome, but I think the offense looks probably not as efficient and not quite as good. Wattenberg is still kind of cutting his teeth. I don't think he's really he's quite there yet. You know, the offensive line has struggled here and there. Palczewski looked fantastic though on the right side, filling in for McGlinchey, but Bowles' season is off to a really rough start. And you know, thankfully Tampa Bay didn't have their full complement of players going into that game. But yeah, it wasn't just that Denver won, Bill. It was that they punched him in the mouth. I mean, you win a game by 3 possessions in the NFL. It doesn't matter what the circumstances are. It doesn't matter which team is playing which. You're on the road and you win by 19 points. That's enormous. And I think that'll be a really good jumping off point for the rest of the season.
I agree. Before we go on to the next topic, my nephew Mauro says, my nephew Robert says, Mauro, you have seen the new kickoff rules for 3 weeks now. What are your thoughts? Do you like it or not?
I mean, I think it's okay, Robert. I honestly think that they're going to get to the point where they're just going to give up those extra 5 yards, and the majority of the time we're going to see the kick go into the end zone. I think if they really want more exciting returns, like I don't know why you wouldn't just move the kickoff back 5 or 10 yards or something like that, and then maybe let the kick coverage team stay where they're at, move the kicker back 5 or 10 yards. You know, it's fine. We've seen more returns, and I know that's kind of what they were going for. But I think it's still kind of fallen a little flat when you discuss like what they were really hoping to get out of it. The strangest thing to me is that they didn't have like usually when they implement a new rule, they'll kind of try things out in the preseason to see how it looks before implementing into the regular season. And they kind of just rolled with it, you know, which I think was a little strange. But maybe it'll pick up. Maybe as time goes on, you know, teams will be a little bit more creative with their returns. But we haven't seen anything really crazy yet so far. So it's fun. You know, it's new. New is usually fun. But in terms of excitement, they call it the dynamic kickoff. It's not that dynamic, at least not yet.
Yeah. I have a different take on that. I say if it goes in the end zone, instead of putting it at the 30, put it at the 40. then you're almost half of the field. They're going to not kick it in the end zone as often.
Then you have to kick it to him. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. KB 82 says he likes the kickoff rule, but he hates it being kicked in the end zone all the time. Well, that's my point. That's why.
Well, and that's what we would try. Like, if it was up to me or Bill, obviously, if it was up to you, we're trying to change the rule to where you're getting more returns. And I think they tried to do that, but, you're not going to get that many more. We've seen it already.
Exactly. Okay. This I don't know if it's right up your alley as far as treating injuries and or almost injuries or slight injuries. I'll get into it. Okay. For anybody out there who doesn't know, Alex Singleton is out for the rest of the season with a torn ACL. My question to you, Mario, is twofold. One, how in heaven's name does Alex Singleton play 4 quarters, that intensity, lead the team in tackles, and have a torn ACL? Is that? I mean, I don't even know how's that possible.
If you had told me that somebody would have done that going into the season, I would say absolutely not. You're out of your mind. You can't do that. And it's not necessarily that it's like an immediately debilitating thing when you tear your ACL, but it's like there's certainly a lot of pain. So the fact that he was still able to like generate the force that it requires to play professional football and play an entire game is insane. The only thing that I can think of in terms of like how he was physically able to do it, if you think back to, I think it was the 2013 season, when Chris Harris Jr. had torn his ACL a couple weeks before the team played in the Super Bowl. And then eventually he had posted like a workout video where he was doing like full on workouts. And it came to be the fact that it wasn't an actual ACL tear that Chris had suffered, but he had a lot of scar tissue in that knee from like previous injuries and just playing football. He had torn the scar tissue. Now it was still painful. We don't know if he actually, you would have to ask Chris, or maybe I can ask him someday, like, do you think you could have actually played in the Super Bowl? I'm sure if you ask Chris now, he'd say, oh yeah, absolutely, I should have played in the Super Bowl. But that's the only thing that I can think of is, maybe it was a tear of the scar tissue that was in there, and then like a partial tear of the ACL. But I mean, that's the only thing that I can think of. I mean, regardless of the situation, what he did was Herculean. Like it's unbelievable that he was able to play an entire game, because he got hurt in the first quarter and he finished the game. Like you said, led the team in tackles. Just unbelievable. You can't say enough amazing things about that performance.
And what I read too on that follow-up is that even the coaching staff had no idea. They were shocked when he was in the locker room, and it was however they discovered it or whatever. They said they were shocked that not only did he tear it, but he played the entire game. I mean, that was just unbelievable.
That's the only thing you could say about it. It's shocking. It's unbelievable. I hope that at some point someone does like a sit down interview with Alex and ask him about it. It was like, what did it feel like? Did you know? Like how bad did it feel? Like, these are the things that I gotta know as a body worker and a healthcare practitioner, because it defies logic.
It does. Now, McGlinchey did not tear his ACL, but it's an ACL sprain. Explain to myself and everybody watching, what is the difference and why is it a sprain almost as bad as a tear?
Yeah, so sprains are weird because there's different like degrees of sprain. So that's why when you see a sprain, they'll give you a timeline. It'll be, I think McGlinchey's is 2 to 4 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. And so it just it just depends on the degree of the actual sprain. So like a sprain could be that, the ligament is stretched to the point where it's causing discomfort, and if you continue to play on it, then it could be a full tear. Sprains don't have to be repaired. Like an ACL tear, that has to be repaired by surgery. If you're a professional athlete. If you're not a professional athlete, in theory, you could wait for an ACL to kind of like heal itself, but that doesn't mean that it's going to heal correctly. Right. So with a sprain, you pretty much just have to rehab it and wait for it to get better.
Wow, that's crazy. Now, have you ever worked on anybody that has a torn ACL or recovering from one or anything like that?
Yeah, I've worked on a handful of guys who I have a very specific program that I do for the athletes who are recovering from an ACL. And the most important thing to keep in mind with those guys is, they spend so much time rehabbing the knee itself that everything else kind of falls by the wayside. All the attention is usually on the knee. But what happens, like the knee is a very specific joint, and it's a hinge joint, so it only goes up and down only so far, and it's right in the middle of two dynamic joints, the hip and the ankle. So ankle, you have full range of motion. The hip, you have full range of motion. So that's why the way that God made us, we have all of these different ligaments that go all these different directions that are holding the knee together because it can only do this,
Mm-hmm.
whereas the other joints are all over. It's kind of the same with like shoulder, wrist, and then the elbow in between, but we're not walking on our hands. So there's not that constant pressure. So the reason that I bring this up is because when we're doing these kinds of treatments, we have to make sure that the hips are aligned. We have to make sure that the ankles are good. If you focus all the time on the knee and you don't make sure that the rest of the body is taken care of, that's why we see repeat injuries. Like if you tear an ACL, you're much more likely to tear that ACL again. And it's
Wow.
not even necessarily because of the structural integrity of the actual knee itself, but it's because the rest of the body, the hip and the hip and the ankle specifically, were not taken care of. And you get this compensatory behavior. Like if you tear your ACL, you're going to favor that knee. So then your body starts doing things that it's not necessarily used to, called compensatory behavior, where certain parts of the body are doing things like picking up the slack, so to speak. So when that happens, like especially with the knee, the ankle then becomes overworked, the hip becomes overworked, the hamstring and the quad, the leg muscles, the calf, the tibialis anterior, all the muscles in that leg, they're not firing properly. And the only way to get that back is, trigger point therapy, soft tissue work, muscle activation, body balancing, all kinds of different stuff. So anytime that you see one of these injuries where it's like, if it's we call it a repeat offender, or I do, where it's multiple ACL tears in the same knee, it's usually from other parts of the body that just weren't properly recuperated.
Wow. Kamani says, wow, great, good knowledge. I say great knowledge. I mean, that's just, I mean, you educated me. I had no idea.
There you
So
go.
that's what I love about having you on, Mario. You educate me all the time on stuff.
This is what I love. That's why I love being on. Share the knowledge, right?
Absolutely. Let's see. There you go. KB82 says this is an excellent simplified explanation. yeah, simplified.
Well, and I have experience because I explain it to, if I'm working on a player with their ACL rehab, that's exactly how I explain it to them, and they understand, because it's like, if you're not on the field, then you can't make money. The best ability is availability, and with these guys, it's a job, and they know that there's a lot of money at stake. And not only do they need to be on the field, but they need to feel as close to 100% as possible. So
Sure.
I've had a lot of experience, simplifying it just to make sure that they fully understand, what could happen and like the consequences, if you will, with this kind of rehab.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Sean Payton loves the New Orleans Saints players he used to have, and he brought over Kwan Alexander. Now, he's a linebacker. Do you think Kwan Alexander was brought in to take Singleton's spot?
Yeah, I think as of now it's a depth signing. I'm really interested to see who is going to start on Sunday. Like, I would assume that it's Justin Stranad, but I guess only time will tell. I know Cody Barton said that he'll have the green dots, and Singleton had been wearing it. I assume that the Quan Alexander signing was just to kind of like beef up that room, because that was already a thin room as it was. Jonas Griffin,
Right.
Jonas Griffith had suffered the injury. They had kept Levante Bailey, and then like cut him, and I think he's on the practice squad, but I'm not sure what his status is. I think he might have been replaced on the practice squad. Couldn't even keep up with all of it. All I know is like that room is really thin. I would be surprised if Quan Alexander is getting any defensive snaps. Like, maybe he gets some special team snaps if he's even active on Sunday. Because to get brought into, a team at the time that he did, and have so little time to like prepare and learn the playbook. And this isn't like it's a Sean Payton team, but this is a Vance Joseph defense. Like, Sean Payton is not controlling any part of the defense. Like, this is all Vance Joseph. So, and I want to say this, like, I want to take the opportunity to say, like, as good as the defense has looked in these first 3 weeks, the credit goes to Vance Joseph. And I know we all remember how bad the defense looked early on in the season before they started to figure out, they went on that little 5-game win streak, and it was largely because of the defense.
Right.
I was told that like kind of around that juncture where the defense turned things around, they stopped trying to force Vance Joseph to implement a combination of his system and Vic Fangio's system. Nothing against Vic Fangio's system, but it's like it's oil and water. You have to pick one thing or another. So it's like early on in his career last year as the Broncos defensive coordinator, VJ didn't have free range to kind of call the defenses the way that he wanted. And during that win streak, based on what I was told by the defensive players that I talked to, they turned it around because Vance Joseph was able to implement the actual defense that he wanted to run. So now we fast forward to this year. That's why I don't think that Quan Alexander will likely play, because it's a very complicated system. And I think because of the vernacular that they use and the different assignments, and it's one of these kind of defenses where everybody on the field has to know what the other guy is doing. And like, as long as they're gelling, that's what's going to make it work. Because he calls more blitzes, I think, than any other defensive coordinator in the league. When you're blitzing that much, if you're not on the same page in the back half, you're going to get burned routinely. So because of the nature of that defense, how aggressive they are, how complicated it can be, I'd be shocked if Quan Alexander played any defensive snaps. And if he does, it might only be a handful, or if he, God forbid, gets forced into a situation because of another injury.
Yeah, good point. Now, speaking of injuries, real quick, I forget, I can't even pronounce his last name, from Miami. He's had numerous concussions.
Tagovailoa.
Yeah, there you go.
Tua.
He's had numerous concussions. At what point in time, Mario, does somebody have to just say to him, "Hey, enough's enough. You can't do this anymore"? I mean, is it possible to recover from that many concussions and still be able to play?
Honestly, Bill, it sounds like there are a lot of people telling him. Like, I don't know about the people in his camp and what they're saying or what they're not saying necessarily. But once he got hurt, and once everybody knew it was another concussion, it was a head injury, people were coming out of the rafters talking about, like, is it really worth it? Like, do you really want to do this? Because now we're talking about like life or death. And not only that, but we're talking about quality of life after football. And something that I've realized working with these young men for, over a decade now, is a lot of them have tunnel vision, which is a necessity. Like, as a professional athlete, you have to have tunnel vision, you have to have focus. Your entire life and being has to be committed to football. Otherwise, you're not going to succeed at this level. So when you've lived your life that way for, the majority of his life, in Tua's case, right? That's all that is on your mind. It's like, you're a football player. That's what your identity is tied to. And you've never thought outside of playing football, because he's still a young kid. Like, he's in his mid-20s. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. It's like, when I was in my mid-20s, I couldn't be told anything by anybody. I wasn't trying to hear any of that. Like, when I was 25, 26 years old, like, I knew everything and what I needed to do and what was best for me. And so I think that's the position that he's in. But I really hope that whatever it is, like, whatever the severity is, we might not ever know. Like, me seeing it, and like, in my line of work, and like the players that I've seen, who have been retired for 10, 15, 20 years or more. And I see, the guys that had like some of the chronic injuries, or the guys that got hurt a lot, their quality of life isn't great. And after you're out of the NFL for 5 years, their health insurance no longer covers them. They have to get their own health insurance.
Wow.
So I believe it's Cigna is what they have. So the deal that the NFL has with Cigna, if you've been retired for 5 years, you have a 5-year window after retirement that Cigna will, whatever it is that you need, as long as it's in their coverage plan. After 5 years, you're on your own. You have to find your own insurance. You have to take care of your own body. You have to find your own people in your own network. And I think if these guys knew that, because like, you're never thinking about that. Right. They're living in the here and now because, like I said, they have to. But if more guys were aware of how these things work, then A, they would take better care of their bodies, and B, they would probably think twice about stepping onto the field prematurely. We say it all the time. They're modern day gladiators, and they always say, are you hurt or are you injured? If you're hurt, then you need to play. If you're injured, then you don't play. Right. And in this realm, like, unless you're in the top, let's call it 5%, maybe 10% of players in the league. Unless you're in that upper echelon, you're fighting every day for your job and for your well-being. So you might not be 100%, you might be 80%, you might be 75%, but you're going to push yourself to play, because if you don't play, then the team is going to find somebody else that does, unless you're in that, top 5% of players where it's like, yeah, you're in no real danger of losing your job, at least not immediately. And so I think that being the mindset of these guys, where it's like, if I can walk and I can stand and I can run, then I'm going to be out on that field. And, hopefully eventually, with all the new information coming out and everything about CTE, I hope that they talk to some of these former players and listen when they say, it's not worth it. So whatever the case with Tua, I hope he sees the best, most knowledgeable experts when it comes to brain injuries. And if they give him the advice to step down and step away from football, I really hope that he listens, because this extends beyond football. Like, this is no longer a game, right? This is somebody's life. This is somebody's well-being.
Yeah, great point. Great point. I'm leery about bringing up this comment, but I'm going to do it anyways. Here it is. Let's see what you think, Mario. KB82 says he's asking for a friend. It burns when they pee. Should I go to the hospital or should I ignore it? Just asking for a friend.
Listen, there's a few different reasons why it might burn when you pee. I'm not gonna give out any sort of professional medical advice. All I will tell you, KB82, is that if I was your friend and if this is me and it burns when I pee, I'm going to see a doctor ASAP. Okay.
ASAP. That's classic, dude. Going back to Tua real quick. Kamani says he's lucky he's not the GM, because he would cut him.
Honestly, Kamani, I probably would too. Like, seeing his history and what he's been through. And here's the other thing. It's not only that he's had these injuries, Bill and Kamani, it's that he's not protecting himself. Right. The hit that he took from DeMar Hamlin, ironically enough, wasn't bad. But it was because Tua, instead of sliding and protecting himself, kind of stumbled head first. And again, it wasn't an egregious hit. It wasn't a dirty hit. It wasn't anything like that. It was just like bad angle, wrong place, wrong time kind of thing. So it's like, not only do you have this history, but it's like, Tua, why are you not protecting yourself? Why are you not sliding in this situation? So if he does come back, that's another factor that you have to wonder about. It's like, he's shown that he doesn't know how to protect himself on the field of play. So what's going to prevent this from happening again and again and again? So, like, honestly, Kamani, like you say, he's lucky that you're not. Maybe he would be lucky that you were, because you would be, basically sparing his life.
Good point. Good point. Robert Marino brings up Brett Favre now has Parkinson's. Do you think that was due to all the hits that he possibly took during his career? I don't know.
I don't know too much about Parkinson's, if I'm being perfectly honest. So I don't know if there's a correlation, or if there's a study out there that proves any sort of correlation. All I know is that just because he has Parkinson's doesn't mean that he's not a piece of shit person, because he was a piece of shit before he had Parkinson's.
That's true. That's true. I was texting.
I don't feel like I kind of feel bad, but then I also don't, because it's like, well, you kind of did a really slimy, skeezy thing, and you're kind of a shitty person. So,
yeah. It's funny. I was texting my nephew Robert, and he said the exact same things you just did. He goes, "I kind of feel bad for him, but then again, not really, because I never liked him to begin with." So
yeah, it's like if P. Diddy got Parkinson's, I wouldn't feel bad for him.
Yeah. Good point. Okay, now we all knew and we all know that PJ Locke is the best corner in the entire NFL. I mean, people can argue all they want about it.
Pat Surtain.
I mean, Pastor, what did I say? PJ Locke. Oh,
PJ's good. PJ's good. I know what you meant. It's all right. It's a Freudian slip. It's all right.
Thanks for correcting me.
PJ Locke is really good, but yeah, Pat Surtain's the best corner. Absolutely.
I have two P's right next to each other. Okay, let's do the PJ Locke first. One first. Okay, when and I'm going back to Justin Simmons real quick. When we had Justin Simmons as safety, the guy was absolutely forthright, very well controlled on the field, off the field the whole bit, right? Never really took any penalties, that kind of thing. We don't have him. PJ Locke, I know, is a corner, or is he a safety? I forget. He's a safety, right? Yeah. Okay. So PJ Locke comes in, and in the first 3 games, he's been fined twice for bad hits. And my thought, Justin Simmons thing aside, the only reason why I mentioned him was because that's PJ Locke's there for him now. My thing about PJ Locke is he another cancer like who's the guy that we got rid of with the Houston?
Kareem Jackson.
Kareem Jackson. Yeah. Is he another Kareem Jackson in your opinion?
Well, so I mean, it's kind of a convoluted thing, right? So I'll say this about Kareem Jackson. It's like he's been in the league forever. I don't think he's on a roster right now, but he had played 14. Last year was his 14th year in the league. When Kareem Jackson started playing, and for most of his career, the hits that we saw last year that were getting him fined and then ultimately suspended, those hits were not bad. Like they were not considered bad when he started playing. That's how long he's been playing. Mm-hmm. And, cancer is such a strong word. It's like we as fans will watch these plays and watch the way that he hits. And you're like, why are you doing that? Like, better. You need to know better. But Kareem was a patient of mine, and he's a friend of mine, and I've talked to him about it a lot. And he's like, people can say whatever they want, but at the end of the day, this game is so much faster and so much more physical than anybody can ever begin to realize unless you've actually played the game. And not only played the game, but played the game like in this millennia, right? Like recently. Guys are bigger, stronger, and faster than they've ever been, and they just keep getting bigger and stronger and faster. Sure. So, what Kareem had told me is like he's never headhunting. He's not trying to get a 15-yard penalty. He's not trying to go helmet to helmet, but it's just the manner of which he plays. So with PJ Locke, and I do know like one of his fines was from like taking his helmet off and like slamming it and yelling at the official. So like with the hits, like I'm always going to give a pass. And I feel like for the most part, you can tell a dirty hit, but I'm going to be honest. I'm going to tell everybody listening, there are so few like deliberately dirty hits in the NFL. The guys just don't do that. They all understand like that this is a big brotherhood. And even though it's an intense game, you're never going out there deliberately trying to hurt people, at least not in today's NFL. It's like to some point, these guys are taking care of each other. But the thing is, like when you start to play slow and you start to, kind of tiptoe around, that's when guys really start to get hurt, namely yourself. So yeah, my biggest problem with what PJ did, something that we never saw Kareem do, something that we never saw Justin Simmons do, was taking your helmet off in frustration. It's like, look, man, I get it. It was a bad call. It was an incomplete pass. It kind of changed the trajectory of the game. They called him for like a late hit, even though, he actually went out of his way to avoid contact. I forgot who the receiver was. I believe it was Pickens, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it was.
They shouldn't have called the penalty, right? It shouldn't have been called. It shouldn't have been flagged. I think they got a free 15 yards. It was a personal foul, automatic first down, all of that. And again, if I'm remembering correctly, it was either on like a second or third and long or something like that. So it's a big part of the game, and it was a big missed call because this is the process. Like the Broncos are down. They need to get the ball back to give their offense a chance to win. So again, I completely understand his frustration, but you can't do that. It's completely inexcusable. Get to the sideline and then take your helmet off and then get mad. That's not what you got in trouble for. You got in trouble because you couldn't keep your composure until you got to the sideline. So that's the thing that I would be more concerned with, honestly, than the actual hits. Bad hits are going to happen. Like Derwin James just got suspended by the league for a couple of, quote unquote, dirty hits or like helmet to helmet hits. But I still believe that the only reason that the league decided to suspend him was because they have the Chiefs coming up, and God knows that they do everything and anything that they can to protect the golden boy Patrick Mahomes. If he throws an interception, you can pretty much bet that there's going to be a flag on the play, unless it's Justin Simmons.
Yeah, there you go. Speaking of Justin Simmons, Where did I find it? Oh, here it is. Kamani wants to know what kind of season is Justin Simmons having so far, and are you still in contact with Simmons?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Good. Good.
I actually worked on Justin the night before that he signed with Atlanta. He's
Oh
having a
wow.
good year. He's having a typical Justin Simmons year. It's he's not the kind of safety that's going to fill up the stat sheet. And I think the problem with a lot of Broncos fans during Justin's tenure here is, and it was mostly like the older fans who were around for the Steve Atwater days, right, and then like vividly remember that, or the Dennis Smith days, or even the Kenoy Kennedy days. Again, different NFL safeties are different now. Justin Simmons doesn't play the position of safety the same way that a Kareem Jackson or a Steve Atwater or a Dennis Smith played back then. So there are fans that would get upset that it's like he's not having these big hits, or he's not, recording 10, 12, whatever tackles a game. That's not the kind of safety he is. If you want to see the kind of safety he is, Ryan Clark actually did an excellent little and I guess I want to call it write up, but it was a video where he kind of broke down what Justin Simmons did. He just intercepted Mahomes last week in their game against Kansas City in the end zone. That's his fourth straight game against Mahomes with an interception. He's picked him off 6 total times in his career, which is 4 more than any other player. So yeah, like Justin's having a good year, and like those are the kind of plays that he makes. So if you go look at that play, he baits Patrick Mahomes into throwing the pass, and he baited him so well that if you go back and look at the video, when they pan out, Travis Kelce is on the near side of the screen by the sideline. Travis Kelce turns his back to the play before he sees what transpired and puts his arm up, assuming that it's a touchdown. That's how well Justin Simmons baited Patrick Mahomes. So if you're in the camp that considers Patrick Mahomes the best quarterback in the NFL, I don't. I think he's in a good system. I think he's a top 5 guy. I don't think he's the best quarterback necessarily, but that's a different conversation for a different day. But those are the kind of plays that Justin Simmons makes. The things that Justin does aren't always going to show up on the stat sheet unless someone is stupid enough to throw to him. And as we've seen, Patrick Mahomes has been stupid enough to throw to him in 4 straight games.
Yeah. Great point. In regards to PJ Luck, I didn't, or not PJ Luck, Kareem Jackson. I wasn't the one that would label. I didn't label him as a cancer. That's what I read about people saying. He kept getting fined. He kept getting suspended, and then
those people are just ignorant to say something like that.
Yeah,
Kareem was probably one of the most beloved dudes in that entire locker room. Every single player loved Kareem. Yeah, so yeah, anybody that was saying that, it's just not true.
Right. I would have to agree. No doubt. I love the kid. I love the way I like the way he played, because he played hard. He played physical. He wasn't dirty, like you said. He wasn't a Jack Tatum back in the day. So
right. Yeah. Different times.
Oh yeah. Totally different times. Okay. Now we could talk about Pat Surtain.
Bring it on. Yeah, let's do it.
Now we all know that Pat Surtain, like I said, arguably is the best corner in the entire NFL. I mean, the guy's this is his 3rd year, I believe, in the league. He's been to the
fourth year, but yeah.
Okay, 4th year. Been to the Pro Bowl twice. The guy, he's just amazing. Listen to this. The number 1 top receiver for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Mike Evans. Pat Surtain allowed him to catch the ball twice for a total of 17 yards. And he only allowed 1 catch for 8 yards or more. 1 catch, 8 yards or more on 32 snaps. Tell me anybody else in the entire league that's better than that.
It's unbelievable. And I really like it's getting to the point, Bill, where like even me, like I know Pat and I've known him since he was a rookie. I feel myself starting to like almost not recognize the greatness because you just expect it. Now, that's how you know a player is truly great. You expect that when the number 1 wide receiver lines up against them, like back in the days of Darrelle Revis, you just expect them to the point where if there's a game that he gives up 50, 60, 70 yards, which still is a solid game for a corner who's being targeted a lot, or it's an okay game, that you would be devastated if he had that kind of game. You're like, no, that wouldn't happen. That wouldn't actually happen because he's too good. So I really want Bronco fans to make sure that they truly appreciate the greatness of Patrick Surtain. Because it, like, basically week in and week out, there's an entire side of the field. There's one entire sideline that is erased from the game by and large. And the coping from other people, like I saw this on Twitter the other day. I think the guy was it's John Ledyard or something. I could have his name wrong, but he's he has NFL in his Twitter handle, so obviously he thinks that he's an expert. And he like covers the NFL, but his team is the Buccaneers. And so someone had posted the stats of like how many catches and yards that Pat has allowed throughout the first 3 weeks. And this guy comes in and he quote tweets it and he's like, well, these numbers are deceiving because there was a couple pass interferences against the Steelers. And granted, there were, like, he's had some penalties and like more than he should. But we're just looking at stats. It's like how many yards that he's accounting for. And according to those stats, nobody is better right now. And his level of cope was so unbelievable that when he started justifying why Mike Evans wasn't more involved, he was saying, well, they had it in their game plan that they're using him as a decoy or they're not targeting him or they're doing this. And so he's like talking around it. So if you don't know about football, like if you're just a casual, you're like, oh, well, yeah, okay, it was their game plan. Like they just wanted to get Godwin involved more. They wanted to establish the run game. They wanted to X's and O's and whatever. The way that I see it is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were like their offensive play callers were so dead set on not allowing Patrick Surtain to take the game over that they just completely avoided Mike Evans to the point where their offensive game plan was we're not throwing to Mike Evans, who is a top 10 still wide receiver in this league. So it's like when this guy's trying to cope and like explain why Mike Evans didn't have a big game and say, well, it just wasn't in the game plan. It's like, yeah, but why? It wasn't in the game plan because Patrick Surtain ate his lunch up and down the field.
Yeah.
And so when you said that, he's arguably the best corner, I don't think that there's an argument anymore to be had. I think it's far and away Pat Surtain is the best corner in the league, and he got compensated for it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I find it really kind of funny looking back that his dad was trying to get him to leave the Broncos. How crazy is that? I wonder what his dad's thinking now.
It's funny because I did talk to Pat about that. And I was like, he's not a big social media guy. He's not a big talker either, right? Like he's about as humble as you will ever see a cornerback, because nowadays, man, cornerbacks, they're mouthy. They like to talk. Like, look at Sauce Gardner. The only reason that people think that Sauce Gardner is better than Patrick Surtain is because he tells people that he is. Pat Surtain doesn't need to do that because he lets his play speak for itself. So when I asked Pat about that, he's like, yeah, I actually asked him to take that down. It's like he's my dad, and it's just a dad being a dad, and it got attention because he is who he is, and I am who I am. But he didn't sign off on that, and I gave him a pass because it's just like I'm a father and I'm about to have 2 boys, and it's like if someday my son is in a situation like that where it's like I feel like he's in a bad situation, then I would speak out on his behalf as well, even if it's not the best thing for him.
Yeah, I just found it ironic too that but again, if you look back at the situation, it was under Nathaniel Hackett. That was horrible. It was under Russell Wilson with Sean Payton. That didn't go over well. So I understand kind of where it's coming from, saying, hey, you're wasting your talent, so to speak. I'm glad PS2 didn't take the bait. Because I'll tell you what, man, he's phenomenal. He's amazing.
Thank God that they locked him in. I would have been okay if they signed him to a 20-year contract. Give him a Bobby Bonilla contract. The Bobby Bonilla contract? You remember Bobby Bonilla Day? I forgot what day it is, but every year, Bill, when God, I can't even remember who was it. The Giants, right?
I was going to say Giants. Yes, Giants or Mets. I think it's the Giants.
Oh, I think it's the Mets. Yeah, I think you're right. Where it's just like the same day every year. Bobby Bonilla gets a couple $1 million because they signed him to this massive contract, and just to make sure that they didn't pay it all up front. That's the kind of contract that I would have been okay with giving Pat Surtain. It's like whatever you need to do to keep him here for his entire career, that's what you need to do. And so
Absolutely.
thankfully they're well on their way to doing that.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Um, okay, let's. I got a couple things left. You got some time?
Yeah. Yeah. However
Okay.
much you need, Bill.
All right. Come on. He said, Mile High Mario, love to be your best friend. You know everybody.
Let's be friends, Kamani. I'll be friends with anybody, man. Absolutely.
That's cool, man. That's cool. And then, of course, right before we wrap it up, if you got any good stories, man, I'd love to hear a good story about a past working on, or maybe something, maybe something. I don't know. I don't want to say personal, but
Oh yeah.
like the last time you shared about your dad and what he meant to you, trying to have your first child.
Yeah, you
So,
know what? I actually have a really good one that I don't think I've shared with you. So, if anybody that doesn't know, my dad was a chiropractor for 50 years before he passed, and he started working on Bronco players back in the 70s. Guys like Otis Armstrong, Rick Upchurch. I call Rick Upchurch Uncle Rick. He was around all the time. Like, he's still incredibly close with our family, and so throughout the years, my dad just always worked on Bronco players. So I have it's two separate stories, but it involves the same person, who's Steve Atwater. So Steve Atwater used to live in our same neighborhood in a different subdivision, and he and my dad were really close. He came into the office all the time, and so I remember, I was a huge Broncos fan, and the year that they were on their way to the first Super Bowl in 1997, they had the AFC Championship game in Pittsburgh that year. And my dad is originally from Ohio. He had a bunch of family out there, so we actually flew out to that game. The week before, Steve Atwater came into the office and was getting treatment. As we're in there, we have these things on the massage roller tables called bolsters. So they're these long cylinders that go under your knees to make you more comfortable when you're laying down. I'm in the back room where the massage tables are, showing Steve Atwater, arguably the greatest tackler of all time, on this bolster, and I'm in third grade. Okay, I'm 10 years old. All right, I'm showing him how to tackle Jerome Bettis, because Jerome Bettis was big back, had the big legs, right? And so here I am, 10-year-old Mario, and I played safety and wide receiver in my little league team. Okay, so I knew a little bit what I was talking about, and I'm showing him how to tackle Jerome Bettis. I'm like, yeah, you have to wrap up, and you have to get low right here, because if you go high, he's too big up here. So you have to go, and I went on for way too long of a time. And God bless Steve, nicest human being ever. It's like I'm sure if you know anything about Steve Atwater, if you've heard anything about him, it's all true. He's an absolutely wonderful human being. So he listened to 10-year-old Mario give him tackling tips a week before the AFC Championship game. And after they won the Super Bowl, he signed a picture for me. It was a picture of him in Super Bowl 32,
nice.
and he wrote a note, and I still have the picture somewhere in my storage. And he said, "Mario, thank you so much for the advice. I couldn't have done it without you," which I thought was just the coolest thing. And that's I will always just adore Steve Atwater. And the other story that's kind of connected, another Steve Atwater story, that year, when I was in third grade, and I vividly remember this, I would tell my teacher was a big Denver Broncos fan, and I would tell him he loved Steve Atwater, and I was like, Steve Atwater's my friend. And he was like, "No, okay, Mario." I was like,
Yeah, right.
"No, my dad knows him, and Steve Atwater comes over to our house all the time, and I get to hang out with them, and I know
Mario,
his
come with me
kids
to
and
the
all of that."
nurse's office. Okay,
Yeah,
come to me.
exactly. And so it's like he did not believe me, and it's like I don't blame him. Again, 10 years old. Why the F would a 10-year-old be friends with Steve Atwater? And it's something I've learned about being around kids. I always worked with kids. I used to be a camp counselor. I worked at a before and after care program with kids. Little kids lie all the time about everything. So he's well within his right to believe that I'm lying. And so it upset me. Because it's like, yeah, I lied about a lot of dumb stuff too, but this, like, I was telling the truth here, right?
All right, show and
So,
tell's coming. Show and tell's coming. Come
yeah,
here.
so I go home and I tell my dad, I'm like, I told Mr. Smith that I'm friends with Steve Atwater and he didn't believe me. And he's like, really? What'd you say? And I said, well, I said my dad knows him and he comes over to the house and we hang out and he didn't believe me. He's like, okay, all right. So a couple days later, I'm in class and get a knock at the classroom door and it opens and there's my dad standing there with Steve Atwater. And
Go,
Steve walks in and he goes, and he says, hey, I'm here to see my buddy Mario. And my teacher's jaw dropped to the freaking floor.
That is so
and not
classic.
only that, Steve hung out with the whole class. He had cards for everybody. He signed cards for everybody, handed them out to all the kids, the teachers, met the teacher. And then the teacher said to my dad, he goes, Dr. Vetanze, I'm going to be honest. When Mario said that he was friends with Steve Atwater, I didn't think he was telling the truth. And he's like, I know, I heard. And that's why I brought him in.
Yeah.
So two amazing Steve Atwater stories that, obviously, and there were so many great instances with Steve, but those two have always really stuck out to me, like just the absolute coolest guy ever.
Well, of course they would. Well, I would totally understand they stand out because you're young. You're 10 years old. You're impressionable, and then
yeah.
But I love the story about him just listening to how you tackle, a Jerome Bettis, and is that who it was? Jerome Bettis? No.
Yeah, I remember correctly. Yeah, it was Jerome Bettis.
And
and that's probably the worst thing he could do, Bill, because I'm going around like the Broncos won the Super Bowl because of me. They beat the Steelers because of me. I gave Steve Atwater advice. I'm the man. I did that. Mario Vetanze, what's up? Man, my shit didn't stink for a few years after that. That's for sure.
That is so classic, man. That is classic. Yeah, Steve Atwater. One of my favorite all-time Broncos. I was so glad to see that he went into the Hall of Fame. Oh my gosh,
that was amazing. Yeah,
totally deserved it. All right, we'll get back to another story at the end, possibly if you have time and if you have a story. Now, going into first off, I'm gonna do this real quick. I can't do this on the air right now. Kamani said, "Bill, tell Mario about the ding dong story." Should I do it, Mario?
It's up to you, Bill. It's your show.
I said it one time during a Bronco neighborhood, and I've never been able to live it down with any of these guys in the chat. And all across, I have no idea how many people watch on a regular basis. But what the heck? It happened. It's real. It's out there. I'll tell it again. For all those who haven't heard it, here it goes. South years ago. Oh my gosh, back in the 90s, early 90s. I was living down the South San Diego area. And my wife's brother came over. We had a ping pong table. And he wanted to he said, let's play some ping pong, And he said, let's make it more fun. Let's put a cup out in the middle. We kind of invented that pong game, obviously, back then, but we never got money for it because we were stupid enough not to.
Could have monetized it, Bill.
I know. So anyway, we put a cup in the middle of the table, and if you landed, and then you filled it up with a drink or whatever. If it landed in there, you had to take if it landed in there, you had to drink the whole thing that was left in the cup. If you hit it, you took one drink. Okay. Well, after doing that for about an hour or whatever, I said, you know what? I'm getting tired. I'm gonna go to bed. And he's like, don't do it, man. Don't do it. And he said, you can't give up on the game now. Don't do it. And I said, I can't. I said, I can't do it, man. I'm tired. I'm just beat. He goes, all right, man. I've warned you. I said, oh, fudge, he ain't gonna do that. No big deal. So anyway, I go to bed, right? So I wake up the next morning, and I dang near scream out of bed. Oh, what the hell? What's going on? Oh crap! What'd I do? My wife's like, what? And I said, oh my gosh, I crapped my pants. And she goes, what? She goes, you've never done that before. I said, babe, I think I crapped my pants. I had ding dong shoved up my butt, Mario. And I was freaking out, dude. I was totally freaking out. I lost my mind, dude. I jumped in the shower. I'm like, wow. it was I was like digging it out of everywhere. Oh, my wife was like, she shook her head and she goes, "That's my brother." And I said, "Oh crap! Can you believe that?"
That's better than any story that I could ever tell.
But
Kamani's asking if you get a ding dong in your butt, how do you get it out, Mario? Honestly, Kamani, I have a bidet. Okay. So it would not be difficult for me uh, to get a ding dong out of my butt. It wouldn't.
uh,
Ironically, the Broncos now apparently have a player named Bidet. And I
they
think that
do.
it's
Oh yeah, but they,
appropriate,
yeah.
Bill, because he cleans out the dirty areas thanks
Mhm.
to a quick burst, usually right up the middle.
Yep. Come on and listen up, Bill. Hey, I'm never going to let that happen again because I'm never going to be playing that game again with him. That's for sure. once,
Yeah, I
once is
wouldn't
enough.
either.
Once is enough. All right, moving on to week 4 of the Broncos season. This is the first quarter of the season. Okay, we are traveling to the Jets. Actually, we didn't travel. We went from Florida, Tampa Bay, went up the coast. I wonder if that game's is that game still on for Sunday because of the hurricane?
Yeah, as far as I know.
Okay, that's what I thought too. Okay,
I think it's just Southern Florida that's being affected right now, but I think there's a game at University of Miami tonight, and the game was going on, and it seemed like everything was fine. So
nice.
apparently, everything's gonna
It
go
just
according
moved
to
out.
plan.
Yeah. Last year we lost to the Jets minus Aaron Rodgers. Quarterback for the Jets last year, Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson's now on the Broncos. Aaron Rodgers is healthy. Do the Broncos win this game?
This is a really interesting game to me because it's like this is how you know there's so many different ebbs and flows of the league. So it's like you look at the Broncos. If you had asked me after the first 2 weeks, I'd say, yeah, this team's probably starting 0-4. They're going to have a big uphill battle to overcome. Now, after they looked as good as they did against Tampa Bay, especially the defensive line, the edge rushers, they pressured Baker all day long. I think they ended up with something like 6 or 7 sacks.
Seven. Yep.
All of a sudden, I changed my tune. Now, you look at the Jets, they got absolutely whomped by the 49ers. And then I think they beat the Patriots the last week. And then I think they had the Titans and they beat both of those teams. So it's like
Mhm.
Titans are not a good team. The Patriots are arguably the worst team in the NFL. So those aren't great measuring sticks. So I think at this point, it's like, yeah, Aaron Rodgers has looked good. Aaron Rodgers has looked sharp, but he carved up the Patriots defense. Again, it's not a good team. I understand that they beat the Bengals in week 1. Bengals are notorious, slow starters, whatever. So I don't think we really know what this team is. I think the most dangerous part though of their offense is their running game. Like for my money, I think Brees Hall is arguably the best running back currently in the league right now. I give it to Christian McCaffrey if he was healthy. And Braylon Allen is an absolute monster. He was a kid that I
Yeah.
scouted coming out of Wisconsin. He's only 20 years old, which is unbelievable. I think when he scored a touchdown a couple of weeks ago, he was like the youngest player to ever score a touchdown in the NFL. They have a two-headed running attack that is absolutely unbelievable. And it really takes a lot of pressure off of Aaron Rodgers, which is not necessarily what you want to do. So
Mhm.
I think this Broncos team matches up well with this Jets team. The Jets, their offensive line isn't great. Their running backs are great, but their run blocking leaves a little bit to be desired. And so that's where it's a good matchup. The thing that's worrying me the most about this game, though, is like, what is the absence of Alex Singleton
Yeah.
going to mean to that defense? And it's like, if there's any quarterback in the NFL that knows how to take advantage of a weakness of a defense and exploit, a certain person, it's going to be Aaron Rodgers. So, uh, I think the Broncos win this game. I think it's going to be a close one. I think it's maybe like a last second field goal type of win, or they win by 6. Yeah, kind of like what around the lines that Kamani is saying. I don't know if the Broncos would be able to score that many points. Of course, I
Yeah.
didn't think that they would score 26 against Tampa Bay, and then here we are. So. But that Jets defense is very good. Sauce Gardner's a top 5 cornerback in the league. He's not the best. He's probably not the second best, but he's very good. You hope that he doesn't take Cortland Sutton completely out of the game.
Mm-hmm.
But the more important, honestly, at this point than like a win or a loss is I want to see Bo Nix continue to grow and get better. That was the most impressive thing about that Tampa Bay Buccaneers game to me, and the thing that I was most excited about. Winning by 19, awesome. The defense playing as well as they did, awesome. But I've said it on my show on Altitude Adjustment with Patrick Chiotti pretty much every single episode. The Broncos and Bronco fans and every party involved, you have to hope that Bo Nix continues to improve and continues to get better. That is the number one thing of this whole season, that when we're in week 14 and 15, no matter what the record is, no matter whether or not they're in the playoff race, and hopefully they are, but even if they're not, you have to look back at the season and say, did you see consistent growth from Bo Nix throughout the season? Could you tell that he was getting better and better and better? So I think this is more of like a 20 to 16, 20 to 17, 21-17 type of game for the Broncos. I will say the number one thing that they do have to do, because Will Lutz kicked a lot of field goals. Thank God for Big Nut Lutz, because he's got my back and he's got all of our backs, right? But at some point, you've got to stop settling for field goals. You got to score touchdowns. They scored 2 touchdowns early, and then the rest of the way they just kicked field goals. Points are points, but those field goals have to turn into touchdowns if you really want to start competing.
Absolutely. Kamani basically says the same thing that you did. He says this is a game that we need to him to set the tone for the rest of the season.
I agree.
I would too. Okay. Wrapping it up on the actual topics or whatnot. I had the Broncos going 9-8 this year. Reason being is because I just didn't know how Bo Nix was going to be and the team and all of that.
Sure.
I have them losing to the Jets because of Aaron Rodgers and because of the running game, and I had the score at 24-20. I hope I'm wrong. I had the Broncos losing last week and we won, so I'm hoping to keep that trend going.
So you got to keep picking against them, Bill.
That's it. Got to keep going against them. Now, on the teams after them, real quickly, do you see us beating the Raiders?
Yeah, and it looks like Devontae Adams isn't going to play in that game. Max Crosby is banged up. That's a bad team. I have no idea how they beat Baltimore. Any team can win any given week. Yep. But yeah, the Broncos, I mean, they've never beaten the Raiders in Las Vegas. That's got to stop. Like, as the Las Vegas Raiders, I should say. They've never beaten the Las Vegas Raiders. That has to come to an end at some point. And they're going to be wearing their throwback jerseys. Right here. I have this nice shirt on my website, altitudeadjustmentshop.com. If you're interested, a little Big Nick's energy. We've got the throwback royal blue and orange colors. But yeah, they're going to be in those throwback unis. They're gorgeous. They're perfect. They're the best uniforms in the NFL against a depleted Raiders team that's already devoid of talent. They absolutely need to beat the Raiders, and they need to make a statement in that game. They need to beat them like bad. That needs to be like a get-right game for them.
Yeah. Okay, then after that, we have the Chargers at home. And by the way, the Chargers have issues with Justin Herbert because of his foot.
Yeah, he's had some weird health things going on for sure. It feels like every year we beat the Chargers at least once if we don't sweep them. And it always feels like the Chargers have high expectations. It's felt this way for what feels like a decade plus. The Chargers always have high expectations, and then they always fall short of those expectations. I think that they're a good football team. Justin Herbert is a really good quarterback when he's healthy. If he's not 100%, I don't know what you're going to get out of him. J.K. Dobbins, for the time being, seems to be completely resurgent. But that's what they want to do in a Jim Harbaugh offense is they want to run the ball. They want to pound the rock. They want to take the pressure off of Herbert, complete passes when you need to. It's going to be a ground and pound game. And as long as this Broncos front continues to hold up the way that they are, they match up really well with the Chargers. So I think that's a win as well.
Okay, then you got the Saints on the road. And speaking of the Saints, we'll go to Robert's question real quick because the Super Bowl's in New Orleans. He said, do you think Lil Wayne should have been the halftime performer, or do you stand with Kendrick?
Why couldn't we just have both?
Yeah.
Like, look at when the Super Bowl was in LA and we got Eminem and Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg and 50 Cent and the whole deal. Like, I don't understand why they couldn't bring in more people. Like, yeah, I felt sad for Lil Wayne. So, Robert, that's a tough question because I love Kendrick, but I grew up on Lil Wayne, you know? So I don't understand. Like, hopefully Kendrick reaches out to Lil Wayne and makes him a part of the halftime show. You know, maybe they do a collaboration or something. That's what I would like to see because I can't pick one or the other.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of back, I said the Saints. Well, the Saints on the road. I have them losing this game. And the reason why is emotions. If you remember when Peyton Manning went back to Indianapolis and they did that big tribute and everything, and he said after the game, he just emotionally wasn't focused after that.
He wasn't in it, yeah. And you could tell.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a loss too as it stands. I mean, and even if you take the emotion out of it, which, you know, that's obviously going to be part of it, it's a short week where you're flying across the country. You're playing what we think is a good Saints team. I mean, they were the highest scoring team in the first 2 weeks, and then, you know, the Eagles kind of brought them back down to earth and kind of made them look like the team that we all thought they were. But as it stands now, it's like it's a really good offense. Derek Carr seems like he's I don't want to say back because he never really arrived, but it's like, is this the best version that we're seeing of Derek Carr? It's like, and is this the real Saints team? Or is the week 3 team that we saw against the Eagles, is that the real Saints team? But as it stands right now, just because of the implications and, you know, prime time game, on a short week is always difficult. So yeah, I think the Saints win that one.
Okay. Then we got the Panthers at home. That's a win. That's got to be a win. Yeah, Panthers.
Yeah, that's a JV team.
Yeah, that no doubt about it. Then we've got the Ravens on the road. That's going to be tough.
I don't know why it feels like we play the Ravens every single year, every other year. It feels like we get them all the time. I don't think that we're winning in Baltimore. I think that their loss against the Raiders was a complete fluke. Though I will say this, I think they had said something like in the last 5 years, no team has blown more double-digit second-half leads than the Baltimore Ravens. So maybe the Broncos' strategy going into that game should be get down 10 at halftime, and then they're susceptible. Because this Ravens team seems like they take their foot off the gas prematurely. But still, the Lamar Jackson factor should scare the hell out of you because you could game plan all day and night, and it doesn't matter. Like, he'll still beat you.
Yeah. It's the same way with Justin Fields with Pittsburgh. We couldn't seem to stop the guy. You know, he was elusive.
Exactly.
After the Ravens, we have the Chiefs on the road. First, I should not say first. First game with the Chiefs. So,
well, they're going to lose that game because the officials will make sure that they lose that game. There will be, 3 or 4 or 5 calls that go against the Broncos. Patrick Mahomes will make a mistake and they'll bail him out. They've done it the last 2 weeks. We've seen it. Or, the defense will the Chiefs defense will, have an egregious penalty and it won't be called. I mean, we've seen this play before. So it's like the Chiefs are going to win that just because of that.
All right. After that is the Atlanta Falcons with Justin Simmons. So how do you deal with that one? How do you do
that's going to be such a tough game. I mean, from a Broncos strategy standpoint, if I'm Sean Payton, I'm telling Bo Nix, find out where 31 is and avoid him at all costs. I think the Broncos win that game, and obviously I want them to win that game, but I also want Justin Simmons to have a pick six. I want him to be able to have a pick six, or at least an interception, right? I want Justin to get an interception, ideally a pick six, but hopefully it's at the point of the game where it's it's kind of out of hand. Maybe Zach Wilson's come in because the Broncos are up by a lot, and Justin gets a pick six. So that would be perfect scenario for me.
But the Falcons also have, what's his name? Quarterback. Kirk Cousins. So they also have Kirk Cousins. And Kirk Cousins, Kirk Cousins is strange to me. He'll play really great during the year, during the season for the most part. And then he gets to the playoffs and doesn't seem to be able to get over that hump, kind of like other quarterbacks we've seen in the past. Does Does the addition of Justin Simmons, even though he's on defense, does the addition of Justin Simmons make that team better overall, or just be only on defense because that's where he plays?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can't say enough things about a guy like Justin Simmons. I mean, I'm gonna sing his praises until I'm like hoarse in the throat. You know what I'm saying? Until I have no voice left. But I think that he impacts both sides of the ball because he's a leader, because he's a guy, and now he's a veteran. He's the guy that all the other players can go to. And not only that, it's like practicing against him, he's going to make sure that you are ready. And something like that is like at someone like Kirk Cousins' disposal, right? I know we never really saw it here in Denver because they just never had the quarterback. Kirk Cousins is that guy, and he can stand to learn a lot from like practicing against a guy like Justin Simmons. I think that was, I mean, it was obviously a great addition for them. I think they understand that they have a bit of a window. I don't know if they're a Super Bowl contender necessarily with Kirk Cousins. They should be able to win that division and get a playoff game, which I'm really hoping for Justin's sakes, because
He
the
hasn't
poor
had one.
guy's never been to the playoffs. Yeah, but no, it's a really solid team. I think the reason that they've lost the two games that they have has been, not great offensive play calling, which Justin has been a part of for the entirety of his career. He
Yeah.
just can't seem to escape it.
Unfortunately, yeah. Would you be sad if the Broncos lost after, let's say, a Justin Simmons got a pick six with 2 minutes left of the game?
Yeah. I love Justin, but I'm a Broncos fan, and
Okay.
so I would be psyched for Justin. I want him to succeed, and I want him to go down as like one of, if not the greatest safeties that played in this generation. I think he's a shoe-in for the Broncos Ring of Fame, and hopefully, if he continues this trajectory, he can be in conversations for the Hall of Fame. And the unfortunate thing is he was never on a good team here in Denver. And so that's why I so desperately want to see him succeed in Atlanta this year, and then wherever he ends up, if he stays in Atlanta or wherever it might be next year. But yeah, at the end of the day, my Broncos fandom, and I told Justin this, I was like, wherever you go, I'm going to root for you. But, I still like the Broncos more. So after he signed in Atlanta, I'm like, man, I hope you guys go 16-1.
There you go.
And I hope that he losses against Denver.
Exactly.
He's like, I respect that.
Yeah, no, that's good. And then we got the Raiders on the road after the Falcons.
I think that's another win. The Raiders just aren't a good team, yeah.
Yeah, I've got them down as a win too. Then we followed up by the Browns.
Some making up to do. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fine. Then we have the Browns at home. Browns they're kind of up and down.
It's such a weird team. Like the Browns defense is good. They have talent on offense. I assume that Nick Chubb would be back at that point. But man, Deshaun Watson is ass. Like he's just bad. And it's crazy to me. Like I have very strong feelings about Russell Wilson. I think he stole from this franchise. I don't think he did nearly enough to earn the contract that he got. But Deshaun Watson is so lucky that Russell Wilson got the contract that he had and then struggled as much as he did. Because for some reason, everybody talks about how bad the Russell Wilson contract was, and nobody, well, not nobody, but way fewer people talk about not only how bad the Deshaun Watson contract was, but how bad the trade has been. It's like, yeah, the Russell Wilson trade and contract, really bad. Deshaun Watson, way worse. And somehow that team was still a playoff team last season. Why? Because Deshaun Watson got hurt. So if Deshaun Watson's playing in that game, I think the Broncos win. If they're on to their second or third string quarterback, for whatever reason, that seems to be the secret sauce in Cleveland. But as it stands today, I'm saying the Broncos win that game. If I'm not mistaken, it's a primetime game. I think that's the one that the Broncos are wearing their blue jerseys. Hopefully they can get up for that. They're going to debut those new blue jerseys, and hopefully those look okay. But yeah, I think the Broncos win that game.
Okay. And then we got the Colts at home. And we lost to the Colts in preseason, but then against preseason.
Yeah. I still don't know what to make of the Colts. I really like them as a team. I think they have a lot of really good players. I like their defense. I like Jonathan Taylor. I love Anthony Richardson. And I think the thing with this game is it's unfortunate that the Broncos didn't get them earlier in the season because we're seeing Anthony Richardson struggle
Mhm.
to like actually play the quarterback position. But he has these flashes. Like he'll make these throws or he'll have these runs where you're like, how are you even human? Like, how are you able to do that? He's unbelievable. He's the best athlete that's ever been in the NFL. Period.
Mhm.
Like we've never seen a dude built like him who can run like him, who could throw like him, and we might never see it again. He is an absolute unicorn. And I feel like as the season goes on, Anthony Richardson is going to figure it out. Their
Yeah.
head coach is Shane Steichen, who started as the Chargers quarterback coach. He was a big reason Herbert was so good early on, and then he was the Eagles offensive coordinator. And we all remember that Eagles team. I mean, he made Jalen Hurts look like an MVP, and Jalen Hurts hasn't really been the same since Steichen left. I feel like if there's one person that can work magic on Anthony Richardson and tap into that talent, it's Shane Steichen. And I think as the season goes on, because remember, Richardson was hurt pretty much all year last year, so he didn't
Right.
really get a full rookie year. So this is kind of like his redshirt rookie year. And I just hope that at that point he hasn't really figured it out, because if he does figure it out and things start to click, that could potentially be one of the best teams in the NFL just because of Anthony Richardson. I think he's that physically gifted.
Yeah.
So I'm actually going to say the Colts win that game.
Okay. Then we got the Chargers on the road. The last three games will be two. The next two are on the road. The last game's at home. So the Chargers on the road.
Yeah, see, this is another tough one. Like, I had them winning earlier, and again, like they just seem to play well against the Chargers, but more often than not, it feels like they split.
Mhm.
So I'm going to go ahead and say that the Chargers win this game.
Okay. And then we got the Bengals on the road. Now this is the next to the last game of the season. If the Broncos need a win or two to get in the playoffs as a wild card, let's say, the last two games are Bengals and Chiefs. Which
It's
which team do they beat if they beat any of them?
That's a brutal, yeah, it's a brutal way to end the season. Yeah, I know the Bengals are 0-3. I know that they haven't
They're
looked
much
good. Like they
terrible.
lost to a terrible Patriots team. They like I don't know what's going on. But see, this is something that happens with the Bengals. Like it seems for the last several years, even the year that they went to the Super Bowl, they start slow.
Mhm.
And so that's why it sucks. Like the same thing with the Colts. It's a real shame that the Broncos didn't get the Bengals early in the season. Now, maybe this trend continues and they just never figure it out somehow, despite having Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins.
Mhm.
Or maybe it starts to click like it has every other year. But as it stands today, just based off of how they've looked, and I will say this, like they should be 1-2. The officials made sure that the Chiefs won that game.
Mhm.
Call it sour grapes all you want. Like they basically threw a flag on a Hail Mary play that was a bang bang play that shouldn't have been completed. They gifted the Chiefs the win. So anyway, we're just gonna say that they're basically 1-2 because that's the reality that I choose to live in my mind. But I think at
Okay.
this point, I don't know. I don't know if I can justify them going into Cincinnati and winning that game unless again this trend continues with the Bengals and the wheels just completely fall off and stay off and then Jamar Chase and T Higgins both want out because one of those guys is going to be gone next year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um you know what? I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the Broncos win that game. I think
Oh,
that the dysfunction is going to take over in Cincinnati.
okay. And then the last game is at home against the Chiefs. Now, if the Chiefs have the division wrapped up, let's say, do they rest their players or do they try and keep the? I don't. Well, we broke the string last year by beating them, but do we beat them again for a second? Back, I should say both wins this year, but I'm just saying from last year to this year.
In a perfect world, Bill, the scenario would be that game is for the division title.
Okay.
Now I understand, probably not going to happen. Very, very rare chance. But man, could you imagine how cool that would be for week 18, game 17 of the season to mean that much? I just don't think that it will. And I think that you're right. Like that was something that I considered. And honestly, if the Broncos are in a position where it's like win and they're in, and the Chiefs had pretty much clinched the division, I think that the Chiefs absolutely rest their starters. They've shown that they've done it in the past, right? I believe they did it last year, if I'm not mistaken, in their last preseason game or in their last regular season game when they had the division locked up. They've done it in the past, so maybe that's how it goes. Maybe they get a little bit of a gift from the Kansas City Chiefs. They rest Patrick Mahomes and the Travis Kelce and the rest of their starters. And yeah, I'm going to say the Broncos win that game. Now, hopefully, that's not the only reason, right?
Right.
I don't want to be this fan that's like, God, I hope that they don't play their normal guys. It's like it felt so good beating that actual team, and it always feels good beating the Chiefs, but it wouldn't feel the same if you beat Carson Wentz.
True. Okay. Taking a last question from the chat, and then I'll wrap it up. Mario, thank you so much for your time tonight. Really do appreciate your insight and all that. Robert wraps it up by saying, Roger Goodell wants to add an extra game to the regular season. Would you be a fan of an 18 games NFL season? And I'll add something to his question. Knowing what your job is or what your profession is, would you welcome another game where more players could get injured by more games?
Yeah, see, that's where I'm torn because it's like you add an extra week, it's more football. I love football. I love watching football. I love the Denver Broncos, but I also love watching good football. I love watching bad football. Anytime football is on, I want to watch it. And I don't think I'm alone. I think that's the majority of people. I think Roger Goodell knows that. That's exactly why he wants to go to 18. He went from 16 to 17 because they weren't going to approve 18. And 17 is a stupid number. There's absolutely no reason that there should be 17 games. It's idiotic. There's no midway part of the season. You can't finish with a 500 record unless there's a tie. It's like everybody knows that it's idiotic and it's an inevitability. So as like a healthcare practitioner and taking into consideration what I do, no, I don't think that there should be 17 games. They should have stuck it at 16. As a football fan, absolutely. I love that there would be 18 weeks of the NFL regular season. Now, if they do that, if that happens, they have to add a second bye week. And I know that's going to make the season 20 weeks long. And then you'll have several weeks for the playoffs. I get it. But you're adding games. You have to give teams an additional bye week. You have to. Yeah. You're giving them one bye week, especially these teams. Like, what's the earliest it is? It's like week 6, 5 or 6 is like the earliest bye week that you
Denver's
can have.
Is 14. That is ridiculous. Or 13.
And that's too late.
Yeah,
that's a really late bye week. So it's like not like if there are 18 games, you have to find a way to give teams 2 bye weeks. And if there's an extra week of football, then you can survive, an extra bye week for each team. That would be my one, accommodation, like my one requirement if I was part of the NFLPA. It's like, look, we know this is inevitable, but we're never going to sign off on it definitively unless there's an extra bye week. Like you have to negotiate that. You've got to.
Right. I totally agree. Mario, it's been a pleasure like always. Really do appreciate you being on. Thanks so much for doing so. Anytime you want to be on, just give me a shout and we'll make it happen, man. Really do appreciate it. Before we head out, tell us again about your podcast and what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started doing a podcast called Altitude Adjustment with my good friend Patrick Chiotti. We're over on the Let's Talk Broncos network that was formed by Zach Seegers, Joey Richards, and Bree Maestas. They have the flagship show over there. Frankie and Robbie do Full Field Read, which I think they actually recorded earlier tonight. Those guys do a fantastic job. They take the film from the previous week and kind of break it down and give you like the all 22 view and break down the film. So if you're a football junkie, it's an excellent show. The flagship show with Bree, Joey, and Zach is fantastic. Those three are so good together. Like they each bring something different. They complement each other so well. And arguably the best show on that entire network, of course, is Altitude Adjustment with myself and Patrick Chiotti. And if you're not familiar with that show, it's pretty much just straight chaos for an hour straight. We aim to entertain, but we also want to educate. And Patrick is the best co-host that I could ask for, because he can really, like, he reins in my crazy, but then he also feeds off of my crazy, and then he's crazy, and then I feed off of his crazy. And so it's a really fun show. It's chaos. It's unlike anything that you would ever watch in terms of like a Broncos podcast. Like, we really tried to break the mold with this one. So if you're one of these people that get kind of agitated, like if you just want facts spoken to you and you want to be told what to think, this isn't the show for you. If you like to laugh and be entertained and shake your head and be like, oh my God, what did they just say? Then that's the show for you. It's live every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And yeah, actually, like I had mentioned earlier, I have a shirt shop, an online shirt shop, where you can get shirts like this. If you have Big Nick's energy, we also have one that says "I believe" really big.
That's the
in
one
typical
Madungus
Broncos
has, yeah.
colors. Yeah, exactly. So you can go to altitudeadjustmentshop.com. We have a couple different Bo Nix themed shirts. So if you use the code Bo Nix on any of the shirts that pertain to Bo Nix, you will get, I think, 20% off right now is the deal that we're getting. So yeah,
Nice.
Go ahead and check that out. And then again, if you're interested in knowing what I do for like a profession, like in my real life, you can go to vetanzetherapy.com. There's a link. Like, if you're interested in scheduling a session with me, or if you have any questions, you can reach out. On my email information is on there. Or if you're just curious about what it is that I do, because it's kind of hard to explain, go ahead and check it out.
All right. Mario, once again, really do appreciate it. Thanks so much. Each and every one of you in the chat. I normally go down the list. I'm going to refrain from doing that tonight. I don't want to keep Mario any longer, get back to his family. And once again, thanks so much, Mario, for your time, for your knowledge, and for your comments. And thanks for the shout out to your podcast. What? And I've checked it out. It is hilarious, you guys. It really is. It's worth the watch. It really is. You'll sit there and do nothing but
I agree.
Mario, on the way out, any last comment, any last thing you want to say, or just peace out?
God bless and go Broncos. I love you all. Thank y'all so much for watching.
All right. Good night, guys. Bye-bye.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast's racking up the flame out. So high, I might never come